Hey guys, Adam here, Cars Geo 72, and on my way home from VIR, 3-day Tidewater Sports Car Club Memorial Day HPDE. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I skipped my last session today because it's just too much. It's hot. Just wanted to get home. Track was really hot and greasy toward the end, and my car was basically overheating, so decided it was probably time to make that my last run of the day. Lots going on after this weekend in terms of the car. My Garmin Catalyst, first time I got to use that. First time I've actually driven hard in the hot temperatures. I mean, I've done some hotter track days, but it was on a much slower track, so you weren't going 130 miles an hour. So let's start the Garmin Catalyst. So the Catalyst worked killer. I have a wireless like speakers in my helmet, and I have that hooked up to a Bluetooth adapter. It's all set up for track use with the right adapters for like a communication system you can plug in, and I actually used it with a guy that I know that's also an instructor, so it's cool. You can talk to each other, and then you unplug that and plug in the Bluetooth, and then you can hear the Catalyst, the coach, the AI coach, and the Catalyst. So the Catalyst is great. You can pop it off when you're done. You can look at it. You can see opportunities. You can show it to somebody who's an instructor, better driver than you, and they'll go through it and say, oh, look, you track out more here and things. It's super easy to use. The Bluetooth commentary is good. So it's not, it'll tell you, I think I use the advanced race coach, and it'll tell you, next right, apex, brake later, or brake longer, or apex earlier, or whatever. And it's telling you this, and then you can try those things. It'll tell you, oh, that was that's above average, so above your average, or keep pushing, meaning you probably are below average. It worked really well. So overall, I was able to shave my PB at VIR. It was hot. So I've done almost all my track time at VIR in the fall when it's, some mornings like freezing. So like you might get a high in the 50s, 60s, 40s. And I can tell you, turbocharged car like mine runs way better in the cold temperatures in terms of power. So, all cars are down on power in hot, humid air. But I was really down on power, like my straight line VMAX, to use the HPDE logo, or the track logo. So my maximum speeds on the back and front straight were maybe 125, and normally those would be 135. I've hit as high on the GPS as 140 on the back straight at VIR in this car. So, way down on power because of the heat. You've got that working against you. Hot track is greasier with all the rubber, and your tires slip slide more. The car overheats more for me. I was struggling with that on my last session. So I had a 218.2, and that was last fall on the same setup, same brake pads, same tires. And today I was able to get it down to a 216.9. So I'm into the 216s, and my optimal lap on the Catalyst is showing like a 214. And that would mean that you have to hit all the segments just right. You've hit them at those speeds before, but not all at the same. You have to hit them all at the same time. Of course, that's challenging. But I would say that that's certainly then doable in colder temperatures, because I'll be going faster. So we'll see. Maybe this fall I'll get it down a couple more seconds. I mean, at this point, I don't really care. But yeah, it was good to see some progress in using the Catalyst to help get a little faster and smoother. And really, so clearly I was slower. My car was slower overall, and I made up 2 seconds, not quite 2, but so it shows that some of those lines I was using before weren't optimal. And I think I smoothed out some of my lines in a couple spots, namely the turn 455A complex, the lower snake, or the snake they call it, the lower S's. I wasn't quite doing that right. So I'd come through, the 4 is a straight line brake, hard left, touch the curb, compromise the left, so you stay left after the turn instead of coming out track right. And then you hit a right over a curb. I was using more curbs and trying to, and then there's another bit that I was really screwing up. So That got smoother and faster. Turn 10, which is the one that the uphill S's and the top of the S's is 9, and then 10 is the left-hander that's blind. And that's, for a lot of people, including me, a fairly scary and unnerving turn. But you have more grip than you think, and you have a lot of track out to the right, but you just can't see it when you turn, so that's the unnerving part. But I was able to go through there much faster than before. On my last session, I think I went through 4-wheel skids, so that was when I decided it was probably time to head home, because that's a scary part of the track if you come off the track, or potentially could be scary if you don't do it right. You go all the way out in the grass to the right, and you're safe. If you try to drive along beside the track, you'll probably break your car in half. There's big Dukes of Hazzard jumps, and then if you're a dumbass and try to jump it back on the track, you'll end up over on the left side into a tire wall. So it's a high-risk corner. So I got better at 10, and I got through, I was able to, Oak Tree to me, I mean, there's a way to optimize Oak Tree versus what I do, but what I do works, and it's not terrible. And then there's the Hog Pen. So I was able to get through Hog Pen a couple times a bit faster. So overall, I made up for the lack of power and speed with some better lines. That's great. 216 in this car is great. I ran in the advanced group, which is my first time running in an advanced group at a real track day. I've done it at the Festivus Volkswagen one at Summit, but that's a overall much more novice level event. So advanced in that event is probably more like maybe upper intermediate or something at a regular HPDE like this. But I ran in the advanced group, and I did fine. I mean, it was great. It's pass anywhere with a point by, including turns. I mean, I was pointing by people in turns, going too wide through turns. So it gets you out of your comfort zone more, but it's good. You just have to be much more situationally aware, because some of the cars are really fast. There's a super race car. I mean, he's up on you like that, like you blink and he's on your tail. So, ideally you don't want that. You want to see them coming and plan the point by so that they don't really have to slow down. And I thought I did fine. I pointed a lot of people by, because there's that class, you're starting to get people that have dedicated track cars, and there's lots of Porsches, Corvettes, M3, really fast cars. So, but it was fine. It didn't bother me. I had a great time. On the Friday, they did I'll call it a mock time trial. The Tidewater Sports Car Club is starting to get a bit more into HPDE versus autocross, which is their core, and they want to do some time trials. And I think they've done them in the past at a NC car track, which is down kind of by Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina. But so they tried to run a time trial. So you put this little transponder guy, it's like a little sensor, like an Easy Pass, and you strap that on facing down at the road, and you use your tow hook, is usually where they tell you to put your zip tie on. And the track has a wire basically underneath the start finish, and I think there's a couple different locations depending on where you're starting and finishing. And when you drive over it, it trips the thing, and it'll tell you what your time is. Well, there's some piece of kit they didn't have, so they rented all these. You generally rent transponders, you don't buy them. And they had everything except the box to make the wire work. So it's no big deal, really. It was only 15 of us doing this kind of for fun time trial. And they classed us by tire, so 200 tread wear or under 200 tread wear, like our comps, and then width. So I was the only one in my class, so I got the participation trophy. So that was kind of funny. I actually got I got my PB that day at 2:17, which then I beat today, but yeah, so it was like honor system. Just come write your times from your Catalyst or whatever, these different race things and people running their cars for lap timers. But that was kind of fun. You have a lot of open track when you do it, but they never got us, typically in a time trial, they stage you. So you would go out on it's like a test laps, and then you come back in and they go, okay, so Adam, you were running 220s on average, and so was Billy Bob over here. So you and Billy Bob are going to go out together in your group, and then the guys running 208s are going to go out together, and that way you basically are trying to eliminate passing, because then you can get your fastest lap. So it was kind of fun. I could see doing one of these, like one of the SCCA ones that they do, the Time Trial National Tour. It sounds very official, but it's a similar, but it's set up, that's all it is, time trial. It was kind of fun. So I did that Friday, but yeah, so definitely did the time trial. Did the Garmin Catalyst. Overall, just got a little faster. It's the first time using some other bits and things I took to the track, a grill, and I bought a new toolkit, and all that got used. And you always, I keep a little notebook and I'll write, next time you should do this. Like, it's dumb stuff like, it's really comfortable to drive in? Freaking sweatpants. Instead of regular jeans or something. It's 90 degrees. So sweatpants and a long sleeve shirt is great. So little stuff like that. And then I stay there in a room above the garages on pit road, which is really just a convenience thing. It's just so convenient. And then I have a garage, and ended up meeting a fella from my area. He's a bit east of Richmond, but he's an instructor and does the Audi Club event, so it's cool. I'm gonna actually hang out with him, I think, this fall when I go back for 2 days with track days, and then 2 days with Audi Club. So it'll be like end of October into November, 4 days in a row. And the track days event has 1 day. The first day is with the Grand Course. That's the only reason I signed up for it, which is just a longer run of VIR. It has a bunch of infield squiggles on the map. So I can't wait to do that, just to say I did it. But I'm going to do those and hang. This guy was super cool. He's an instructor, so I gave him my Catalyst, and he filmed through it and says, here, and then he and I were on the track together. And so he was following me, and he could give me some really good feedback, which was probably actually more helpful than any feedback I got with somebody in the car with me, which I did do. I had a guy in the car ride along with me. It's just very distracting. Like, you're talking and trying to focus, and there's 6 race cars behind me coming up that I really need to focus on, but I'm worried about turn whatever, and now I just blew it because I'm listening. I haven't had an instructor in the car in a while, and so just is a friend of mine. So and he gave me some helpful advice too. So you always can take bits and pieces from everybody, and you just got to be careful, because sometimes you just can't work on everything at once. It's usually like one thing, and you work on it every lap. All right, the car. So I'm running Nexen Enfera Sport R tires, and I think this was my 5th day on those tires. And I did, based on a friend of mine's recommendation, I did some rotation today. I did it's a back to front to back cross. And because I was getting some pretty bad edge wear on my right front, and so trying to not cord the tires, because they're $900. So I think I probably bought myself some time on the tires, rotating them. You mark them when you take them off and go home, so you know where to put them back. They're fantastic tires. They're a 245 40/17, and I run those on my Apex 17x9s, and they're awesome tires. They really work good. They got tons of grip, and happy with them. So, and they seem to be wearing well. They don't really fall off. I mean, not at my skill. I mean, I drive the crap out of them, and they're basically dead on the whole time. Excuse me. So, brake pads. So I run, and brake fluid. So I run EBC. They have a race line of pads, even though people don't really realize that. They always think about the colors, the red stuff, the yellow stuff, the green stuff, the blue stuff. They do have race pads, and they're called RP, race pad, and it's RP1 and X, and I've done some videos about this before, but I'm on the RPXs. I started off with a brand new set, and they're at the backing plate thickness, which is about 5.5 millimeters. And most people tell you, toss them after that, or use them for a simple 1 day or whatever. You could probably get, if I was at the track like for 4 days in the fall, I would still use these pads, and they would probably be done after that 4th day. So 4 days on a set of $225 pads versus probably maybe 10 days or something, or 12 days on the $600 pads. It's the math on it it's not a big deal to me. You're wearing them quicker, but they're cheaper. But man, do they work good. I love them. They're great brake pads. No drama with front brake pads. The rear brake pads on this car are EBC blue stuff with the high torque compound they call NDX. There's like a low and a high torque. Torque meaning the bite. They're basically the same temperature range. One has a harder bite, and it's, as I have found and others have found, when you have these cars with the sophisticated ABS systems, they really like the bite to be the same. So if you run a really low bite front and high bite back, which I've done, it's awful. It's not that it's undrivable, but it's sketchy. The back end squirms around when you're braking. If you flip it around and have too low a pad in the back, it'll kind of do some weird stuff. So these two have a pretty closely matched torque number, which in brake pad lingo is an M and a capital M and a lowercase u. So those brake pads, the NDX blue stuffs and the RPX work great together. I have a small rear brakes. I have 272 by 10. The factory brakes are the same on the Golfs, and then what used to be the Mark 7 GTI, the non-performance pack. So like kind of base model GTIs have these brakes, and some other cars like Jettas and things like that. They're really small, and that's fine. You just, lot of people say, oh, my back brakes pads have been on there for 3 years. Well, I'm done. I'm at the backing plate after I think those have 5 days on them. So you definitely use a lot of rear brake in this car, which is good. And those pads are only about $95. So not a big deal to swip those out a couple times a year. So all in all, you know, my consumable costs on this car actually aren't that awful. I'll probably go through a couple sets of brakes a year and probably have 1 set of tires. So let's see, we hit the brakes. Okay, let's talk about the heat. So it was in the kind of mid to upper 80s, kind of hot and humid. And the first day, actually, I actually did 2 rain sessions, wet sessions, and no problem. I actually like driving in the wet. You slip a lot more. I think my fastest wet time was like a 228. And then my fastest one where it was really wet, like standing water puddles where you hydroplane, the bad one that's under the bridge there before the bridge, before you climb up the S's. I hit that a few times before I realized I needed to go around it. Yes, we had some rain, so it was cooler temps those days, but car ran great. Today, it was hot, and I could get about 3 laps at a good pace, good clip, and then I wouldn't overheat it. What I found after this weekend is the gauge on your dash is, of course, a dummy gauge. It points at 200 the whole time, and that could be 190. That could be I think it's like probably 180 to 230 or so is about that gauge. And the reason they do that, people are like, why can't the gauge actually give you the real temp, which is what I would want? Because your average person would lose their mind watching the gauge move around because your temperature moves around. I mean, if you're on the highway, you're going to have a higher temp than if you're driving around town. And so they just make it look good. It stays steady. What I found was after I had the Simos Tools dongle and I did some logging. And of course, listen, I'm going to download. I got videos, logs, all kind of crap I got to do this week before I travel for work in a couple weeks. So I'll have some other videos, or maybe I'll throw it into the end of this one and make this the commentary. So I was logging, and I have gauges up on my phone, which I'm looking at right now to make this video. And those gauges, it looked like once coolant actually got to 235, the dash gauge moves. So does the digital gauge on the infotainment that I have set up, the off-road menu. Those will move up to 235. And then if you hit 240, gauge moves again. It's like it starts moving past 235 basically, off of 200. It flashes on the dash, you're overheated. Now, you're not really overheated. It's telling you though before you overheat. And so I had that happen yesterday at the end of the day, and I was better today. I modulated it. So I ran, as soon as I got hot, I turned on the defrost full hot. Of course, that can reduce your coolant temp because it's like a mini radiator. So you're taking out some heat from the coolant. So I did that. Car spinning. There's a car in the middle of the road. Oh God. I don't know what this person's doing. What is this person doing? Jesus. It's like, what are you doing? They're just gonna drive backwards. Oh my God. Because they missed their turn, they're gonna actually reverse down a highway. I mean, people are fucking stupid. So, anyway, so basically what I did was I ran the heat, and then when it would start moving the gauge over to 235, I just back off, and it would come right back down. But the problem with that is it's annoying because you're basically you're just driving more casually on the track at that point. And then, oh, it's cooled down. Let me hammer this one turn a little, and then you got to cool it down. It's not that fun. And what I've seen is the oil temperatures, once they get above 280, there's actually nothing wrong with that from an oil standpoint. I mean, your oil's going to be really thin when it's at 280, but the testing on the high temperature, high shear HDHS number you'll see on specifications for oil, that testing is done at like 300 degrees or 305. 280 isn't the main concern on this Volkswagen, and I think a lot of cars are this way. The way the oil cooler works, it's not really an oil cooler, it's a heat exchanger. So the oil goes through part of it, and the coolant goes through part of it, and it's like a, what do you call those? I can't think right now, I'm tired. Anyway, it goes through this exchanger, and what that does when the car is cold is your coolant warms up, your engine coolant gets up to temp very quick, so it warms the oil, get your oil up to temp. And likewise, when your oil's at 280 and your coolant's at 230 or 220 or whatever, well, the temperature delta works the other way. It's taking heat out of the oil. Well, the problem is it really overwhelms the coolant. And so the cooling system on its own should be more than enough on a car to run on the track. But when you add oil, heat, and in mind, the dual clutch auto also has a circuit with the coolant. Cooling fins, that's the word I was looking for, little fins. You're adding the DSG temperature and the oil temp to your coolant. It just, at some point, throws up its hands and says, I can't do it. So if you really wanted to do this right, you would buy a separate oil cooler. You would divorce the oil from the coolant. You'd remove the heat exchanger, put a block-off plate, and IBED, I think IABED, IABED. Anyway, that's the good one. You block it off and you make a separate oil cooler, which of course then in the winter you're not going to get your oil up to temp driving around town, which is also bad for your car. So again, it goes back to, it's a street car. It's a daily driven street car. You're only going to do so much on the track with this thing. If you wanted to have a dedicated track car, then you don't have those kind of problems usually. You have other problems. But anyway, so I was having some temperature issues for the first time ever, and I'm driving harder and it's hot. So most of the events I do are not when it's hot, and I probably won't do another one until till early fall. I just don't think I've got time or effort to money to do it. So anyway, so car worked good, but worked well, brakes good, tires good, but heating cooling system was taxed for sure. I also had some strange codes. Another thing that I've noticed on the track is you'll go out on the track, you do your 25-minute session, and your car's hot. And you come down pit road at VIR, and you come into the paddock on the far side, you have to drive all the way to your garage, and I'll immediately get an EPC. Car ran fine on the track, good power, no problem, no codes, EPC. For the turbo wastegate actuator. And I think what's happening is it's being beat the crap out of it for 25 minutes and then you stop and it's hot. And I think it's the voltage that you check to see how that works is always in range. It's just something with the heat, I think, messes with that actuator. And I get a code, you clear it, it's no big deal. The other one I've gotten two other ones from the same situation. I'll put it in park when it's really hot and have the crap beat out of it on the track, and it doesn't sense that it's in park. There's something called a micro switch in that shifter, and again, it must get really hot and doesn't quite work right. It always works fine after, but I just have to clear the code, and maybe it won't let me start it because I got to take it in and out of park a few times. So something with the heat and the shifting mechanism for the car to know that the shifter's in park. The third one was interesting. I'd never seen this one before today. And again, really hot temperatures. Oil at 282 to whatever. I had an oil pressure sensor issue. And, oil pressure is one of those ones with, if you lose oil pressure, you lose your engine. Period. But I did some quick digging on the code, and what it appears is your car's oil pump, these Volkswagens have a low and a high pressure. So it can either work in low pressure mode or high pressure mode. Well, on the track, it's clearly in high pressure mode because your oil is really thin because it's really hot. So oil gets thinner when it's hot. Even though your 5W40, some people would say, well, it's 5 weight in the winter when it's cold and 40 weight when it's hot. No, that's not how that works. It has the properties, it has the kind of pumping properties of a 5 grade oil in the winter, and it has the characteristics of a 40 grade oil when it's hot. They're still thinner when they're hot and thicker when they're cold. That's just physics. But the oil's super thin, and so what I think happens is when I come down the paddock road or the pit road, it's been in high pressure mode to pump this really, really thin oil. It switches to low pressure mode, and it's not enough because the oil is really hot and thin, and it pukes, gives you a code. So I have no issues with it otherwise, but I noticed that, so that's another weird one. And finally, as I'm rambling as I'm driving here, all right, another thing I tested on the track for the first time, the very, very world famous data-driven MQB. Put the link up to here to his site. You should follow his YouTube. Fantastic amounts of information about these cars. I have the Mark 8 full retrofit PCV valve. So I have a Mark 8 Volkswagen GTI or R PCV valve, and I have the quote full retrofit, which utilizes a Venturi tube or hose off of the turbo outlet. It's kind of neat setup, and what it basically just does is it maintains better vacuum on the crankcase in situations like on the track where you might be coming out of corners and pulling certain amounts of G-forces and causing issues in the PCV where the oil goes the wrong way and you get big bellows of smoke like the video game Spy Hunter. And a lot of people have that problem on these cars. In fact, I had that problem initially on this car when I started tracking it and got some better tires with more grip. I started blowing white smoke. I replaced my factory PCV valve, which I think was the AP revision, with a BL revision, which is off of some Audis and higher power cars, Volkswagen, Golf, Jeep, Golf R, and that problem was gone at whatever level I was driving at that time. But the Mark 8 PCV has had some great logging done by data-driven MQB to show that it really maintains the most vacuum in the most situations, and that vacuum is what makes that PCV valve work correctly and not put oil in the wrong place that then is sucked into the intake valves and blown out as smoke. So I didn't lose any oil that I can tell. I mean, it looks about the same on the dipstick. I'll know when the thing cools off overnight and I'll check it tomorrow, but no oil consumption, good. I'm using for oil, I switched a couple years ago to this super bougie oil by a company called High Performance Lubricants, HPL. They are very well regarded in some circles, oil nerd circles, for being a fantastic oil. In fact, I've actually even talked to the owner on the phone. He's a super cool dude. And they make a lot of racing fluids, like differential oils and motor oils and stuff for race teams that do drag racing and some NASCAR stuff. So they're no joke, and the oil's no joke, and it's expensive. It probably cost me $110 to change the oil in it with that versus, cheaper alternatives. But it's really good stuff. And I'm not worried that at 280 degrees my car is having lubrication issues. But I am going to pull a sample this week and send it off for analysis and have a look. I'm mainly concerned with fuel dilution and viscosity breakdown or oxidation and some other things. I'm not, anyway, we can do a video about used oil analysis, but I want to have a look at it. I actually don't change my oil every event. A lot of people do, and it's not a bad strategy. I mean, you're never going to hurt your car changing oil, but if I buy $100 worth of top-of-the-line oil that gets used in freaking drag race cars, and I'm pretty sure it can handle a 1.8-liter Volkswagen for more than 3 days on the track, I'll probably keep this stuff in all year. But I'm going to do an analysis because I want to see, and it's kind of fun. And maybe I'll do an oil video. I know a lot about motor oil, and I can talk about it. So let's see, anything else? I think that's it. Again, it was a really good weekend, and I'm looking forward to getting some downloaded videos. I'm not going to go crazy. I'll just do my PB from the Catalyst, which is cool because it has all the data overlays and everything. I did run a GoPro the whole time. I have a GoPro. I was running it on my mount, my TacForm mount, which is here, and I have one on the side of my helmet, which makes it look, the side of the helmet makes it look like you're driving faster than this one, but I like to see what I'm doing. I like to watch my hands. I like to look at my head direction, things like that. So even though the Catalyst is just forward-facing on a camera that's mounted up on the windshield, I want to see me, that just for me. So I'll post some videos. Maybe I'll just throw this all into one big-ass track weekend thing, and yeah, continue to have fun. And the wagon does great, and lots of people, ask about it and want to know what's in it and how much power it has, because it scoots around the track pretty good. But I'll finish off with, I rode with the fella that is Data-Driven MQB, and I rode with him. He has a GTI Rabbit Edition, and he's a good driver, and he's hustling that thing around. I think he pulled a 210 today or something. I mean, that's fast as hell in a GTI. Now it's tuned, and he has some hardware on it, and he self-tunes it with the quote open source tuning solution. And so it's really cool, man. He's doing good, and he's done a ton of suspension testing. You should really check out his YouTube channel and his website. It's good stuff if you have one of these Volkswagens, or some of it's applicable to a lot of different types of cars. But I went for a ride along with him, and it really solidifies how much more aggressive some people drive on the track to get those times. Like, you're not just pussyfooting around to get a 210 in that car. You're freaking hammering it, and it's it's not scary to me anymore because I've ridden with people, but it's just shocking to me how much more on the limit he is versus me. But that's okay. I don't want to be on the limit all the time. It's uncomfortable, and I don't want to wreck my car. I'm just not that confident yet. But it was fun to go around and see what that was like. If I would have had more time and it would have been cooler, I was going to let him drive my car and see how much time he could, what kind of times could a better driver get, and I'm quite sure he can get a better time than me. And if you're wondering, I do buy track insurance for these events, because your auto insurance, I don't think any auto insurance is going to cover an accident on a racetrack. Even if you're not racing, even if you're not timing yourself, I believe there's probably an exception in your policy that says that's not counted. So regardless of whether or not it's a driving education event, you're on a closed course, the risk factor is much higher for the insurance company. They're not going to cover an accident. I wouldn't even bother trying to make a claim. But I buy a supplemental policy. They're about, I don't know, for me it's just under $200. I get it through Lockton. The other one is Haggerty. You pick your amount and you pick your deductible. So I do 10% deductible, $25,000. Now, the way those work, there's a lot of misunderstandings about what they are. Some people said, oh, you just choose whatever you want and they'll pay it. That's not how it works. It's just like any other insurance. They're going to say, okay, Adam, your Sport Wagon's book value is $14,500. Here's $14,500 less a 10% deductible. And I'm going to say, wait a minute. Here's, I can justify $10,000 more in modifications. Here's all the receipts and information. Oh, okay, we'll pay you $25,000, hopefully. The question I still have, I'm just going to call and ask, is how do they depreciate those? If you buy a turbo for $1,000 and I can show I had a turbo upgrade, they're not going to give you $1,000 for it. I don't think. I think it's probably depreciated at some level. But $25,000. If I could get 25, if I ever wreck this, that'd be pretty good, including the mods. And then what you can do is you quote buy back your car, which is really not buying it back. You always have the title. They're just saying, Adam, here's $25,000 less $2,500 for your 10% deductible, and your salvage value on your car is $6,000. So we'll take $6,000 off of that, and here's $17,000. So instead of 25, you're getting 17, but you get your car back, and then you can part it out or sell it or whatever. So that's how track insurance works. And it almost, I think all the ones I've seen, they'll cover a second driver, they'll cover an instructor. So if you want to let a guy like that drive it, I'm covered if he wrecks it, which is good to know. Because, I'd be a little worried if you wreck somebody's car, you'd be on the hook. But, check your insurance policy and see. I don't think anybody's going to cover a high-performance driving education event because it's just not how it works. It's a little different than if you're doing... Well, actually, you're never going to get covered. Anything on a closed course track is probably off limits. So I do buy track insurance. I think I've ran out of things to talk about at 32 minutes. So I'm going to get some videos together and some other stuff, and I'll post it later. Okay, one extra thing that I forgot in my laundry list of discussion items here while I'm driving home is brake fluid. So up until now, I've been using Motul RBF 600. Super popular. I've talked about it in a few of my videos. A lot of people use it, and it's $20 a bottle. I get it at FCP Euro, so it's free because I just returned my old brake fluid, and it's free. And honestly, I've never had a brake fluid problem in terms of boiling it, but you have to flush this stuff every time. If I went home and flushed it today, it'd come out really dark and nasty out of the calipers. But the main issue is after the first session or two, the brake pedal already is softer. Now, it's not bad, like in terms of it's not going to stop. The brakes work fine the whole weekend off this fluid, but it's just not, I like a hard pedal. You bleed it, and it's nice and hard, and you go drive for 20 minutes, you come in, and it's got this extra sponge to it. So I'm not sure why, and a lot of people have noted this issue. So I went ahead at TMI Racing there at VIR, the shop, and bought some very, very fancy Endless. I think it's Endless RBF 650. Anyway, it's not a DOT fluid, so technically I don't think it's DOT rated, so, technically, it's not for just daily use, but it doesn't get that cold here, so I don't really think I think there's an issue with some of those fluids when it's really cold and your ABS not working quite right, but I'm not worried about that here in Virginia, so I'm not going to change it out in the winter. But I'm going to go ahead and run Endless. A lot of people love it. My new friend that I was sharing a garage with swore by it, so I bought 2 bottles of Endless, and I'm going to swap out the Motul, and I have, I think, a bottle or 2 left. I'll just use it for my son's car, for autocross or whatever, my Passat. I mean, you can use it for daily use. It's just a higher temperature street fluid, really. But yeah, so Endless brake fluid is going in next time. I'm going to try out and see. A lot of people say you don't have to bleed it. You just put it in and you're good for a long time, maybe every year. The other popular one is Castrol SRF. A lot of people swear by Castrol, same thing. You don't have to bleed it as often. There's one called Willwood XR. There's a couple. So I am going to try the Endless fluid. So I'm done with the Motul. It's just not, I can't stand that the pedal softens up. It's a terrible feeling. So anyway, that's it.